Good morning, and welcome to today's webcast, Technology Debt, Uncover and Eliminate Costly IT Inefficiencies. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome and thanks for joining us. Our webcasts are designed to help elevate your business performance. Transform your future for the better with advisory solutions tailored to your vision and supported by our collective technical resources. Our presentation will start in a few moments. Before we begin, here are a few things to keep in mind. You can customize how you both view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can also adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons, each relating to a different aspect of our session. You can download the group attendance sheet and a PDF copy of today's slides from the slide deck and handouts widget. You can ask our presenter questions during the webcast by typing a question in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions during the presentation or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty during today's presentation, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. As a reminder, the presentation you're about to see is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
And before we get started, I wanted to share our big news that Moss Adams and Baker Tilly have joined forces to redefine accounting, tax, and advisory services for the middle market. It's really exciting, and you can read more about it on our website via the link in the slide deck and handouts widget. Today's session is the second in our three-part tech advisory series, Transform Your Technology into a Value Driver. If you haven't already, you can register for the final session, Aligning People, Skills, and Systems, taking place on September 18th in the widget to the right of the slide view. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters, Chuck Anders, Director, and Kevin Goergen, Senior Manager. Chuck has worked in IT and information systems consulting since 1995, with a focus on delivering complex consulting projects. He has extensive experience evaluating and implementing enterprise software systems, including enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management, learning management, and field service management. He has also specialized in system selection engagements with a focus on objective decision support and risk avoidance. Kevin has been providing ERP selection and implementation services since 2013. He has extensive experience managing complex technology projects from software selection through implementation with a track record of improving operational and financial performance. He provides business process reengineering, software selection, project management, and ERP implementation services for his clients. With that, I will turn it over to Kevin to get us started.
Thanks so much. Chuck, do you want to take the next slide? Chuck, you're on mute.
We're going to look at the agenda for today, and we're going to start with a quick review of our last webinar, how to enhance the return on investment from your existing IT investments. We're going to get into technology debt in terms of understanding what it is, understanding then the hidden costs and the risks associated with tech debt, how to identify and eliminate tech debt, and definitely the benefits of eliminating tech debt. And so we'll start with the recap of our last session. In our last session, we covered enhancing the return on investment from tech investments you already have. And one of the key takeaways we had from that webinar was making certain you understand the inventory of all your systems, your licensing, the related costs, and the user counts, and that you're collaborating with your vendor on the details behind what you're entitled to use, what's implemented, and modules you may own that may be sitting on the shelf. And you want to make certain you consider everything in your ecosystem. Also, by doing that, you do potentially have the idea, and this speaks to tech debt a little bit here, so it's a nice pivot, to work with your vendor on dealing with inactive modules that have either not been implemented or no longer relevant for your business if you've pivoted or determined that they're not going to be a decent fit. I find that most software as a service providers, their hands are tied a little bit in terms of what contract you've signed up for from a revenue recognition standpoint. But we are seeing that certain providers are allowing you to swap, for instance, a module for more users and things of that nature, as long as the dollars and cents wash. So I think it's definitely worth having that discussion. And then obviously to support that discussion, you have to understand how those systems are utilized, who's using it, which departments are using it, and identify those underused features and any pain points that are associated with it. And again, are there any irrelevant components? Take that data and collaborate with the relative providers to see what you can do about getting that more aligned with what's going on in your business and your operation today. And so getting into tech debt, we're going to start with understanding what is technology debt. And it's the future cost or consequences of prioritizing speed and quick fixes over robust and well-designed solutions. And Kevin, you want to cover the sources?
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks everybody for attending today. If at any point you have any questions or comments, feel free to put it in the chat. Understanding technology debt, common sources. So how we think about technology debt, we want to frame that up for you. So while it's often associated with software development, it's just as relevant, if not more so, in enterprise IT environments. So as Chuck mentioned, technology debt refers to the future cost of decisions made to prioritize speed or convenience over long-term sustainability. So for example, implementing a quick fix integration, delaying a system upgrade, or layering new tools on top of outdated infrastructure. So those common sources are outdated software and hardware that are still in use because either replacing them is costly or maybe disruptive. Duplicative tools and platforms. So managing multiple platforms that are doing the same job in different departments. Underutilized applications. This is where organizations pay for licenses or modules that just simply aren't even being used. And shadow IT or unmonitored systems. This is where systems are adopted outside of IT's governance. So often by well-meaning teams trying to solve immediate problems. So these decisions may offer, short-term wins, but they often lead to increased complexity, higher maintenance costs, slower productivity, and potentially elevated security and compliance risks. So the key message here is tech debt isn't just a technical issue, it's a strategic one. So we have our first polling question. It's, what do you think is the most common source of technology debt in your company? A, outdated software. B, duplicative tools and applications. C, underutilized applications. Or D, unmonitored applications or systems. So we'll take a few moments for you to respond to that. And while that's happening, Emily, I saw a Q&A in the chat, but then it was removed.
Like someone was having difficulty seeing the slides. So if you have issues seeing the slides or hearing our presenters today, you can just hit F5 or refresh your browser, and that should reset everything.
Thanks. So we'll wait another 5 seconds or so. I see about 75% in. Okay, let's see the results. So, okay, underutilized applications, far and away. That's good because we're going to talk about underutilized applications as part of this. But then, close I would say pretty much tied for second is outdated software and duplicative tools and applications. And you're not far off from what our clients typically experience in this space. So making sure that we leverage our existing applications and leverage our existing licensing or modules that are being utilized or that you're paying for. That's a big part of this. And then
I'm wondering,
duplicative tools.
Kevin,
Yeah.
I'm wondering on the underutilized applications if anyone's having challenges with user enablement, because I think that quite honestly, in most implementations I've been involved in, the tech's not the problem. It's getting people trained, it's getting people engaged, and in some cases, getting those people away from the muscle memory they have of the way things were before the system was implemented. And I don't know if anybody who answered under unutilized applications, I don't know if you want to pop into the chat and just, give me an amen if that happens to be the case. But we do find that user enablement is very challenging.
Yeah, and I mean, in some cases, it could just be, poor implementation as well, where they're actually bought more software than they're really actually currently using, and maybe phase 2 or phase 1.1 never really happened in terms of getting those other modules up and running and live, or they're just so concerned with around the day to day that there isn't that next step. So it's good.
The phase 2 that never was. We hear a lot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Feel free to use the chat to put in your comments, and we'll move on. So the greatest source of tech debt. So while all of those are valid, the biggest driver of tech debt we see is fragmentation, especially in legacy environments. So over time, organizations accumulate systems and tools without a cohesive strategy. So you end up with legacy software and hardware that just no longer meets or aligns with your business needs. And you have these shadow systems that potentially are adopted by departments without IT oversight. And you could have the overlapping platforms that just simply don't integrate well. They're not connected. You're not sharing data, and it leads to duplication. I mean, we see this all the time with, I'll say, customer master information, vendor master or supplier master information that's being duplicated in multiple different systems all along the way. And so what you have is this lack of governance to manage the life cycle of these technologies. And so what this creates is just this tangled web of systems that are expensive to maintain, they're difficult to secure, and you're just a lot slower within the organization to adapt or adopt the technology. So I think that's hopefully resonates with some of you. And it's kind of like when you go to renovate a house where maybe every room was built by a different contractor with absolutely no blueprints. The results are going to be higher costs, more risk, and potentially serious drag on business productivity.
Kevin, I also think that when we look at the fragmentation, we also see this a lot in industries where you have to go best of breed. It's a necessary evil. There is no system that covers all the feature and functionality. Healthcare is one, telecom's another one, where, I have to have separate billing systems. I'm potentially serving several masters from a functionality standpoint. But where I think organizations suffer is when they don't have a strategy, like you indicated before, around that best of breed approach. Here are those discrete applications that we need for those specific areas. We know they play well with the other applications we're road mapping in, and we've got a plan to tie all of this together. As you mentioned, data governance. Which system is the system of record for which component or which area of the data set?
Exactly. Yeah. So what are some causes of technology debt? So how does this debt accumulate? So where do we see evidence of tech debt first? And it's in tactical decision making, which also could be just pressure to meet deadlines. So the pressure to meet deadlines often leads to quick decisions like buying a tool without fully evaluating its fit or potential long-term implications. And now you're stuck with that for the length of the contract, even though it was meant to be a quick fix. And people are reliant on that. They build it out, and now hence you have this technology debt. A lack of clear requirements, can result in systems that just don't meet your business needs or are very difficult to scale. Again, outdated technologies, that these things are kept alive because they're quote unquote good enough, right? Or potentially too complex to replace. We've done so much in order to have this system meet our exact needs in these different areas that it would just be too costly or too complex to replace them. And then you have information silos where departments operate independently, leading to redundant systems and inconsistent data. And then once more, I just want to touch on the poor governance. So no centralized oversight of what's being purchased, what's being implemented, and what's being retired. I think those are important pieces. And Chuck, I know you want to talk on the evidence of effective technology.
Yeah, definitely. And when we look at companies that I see have either turned a corner or they're in a pretty decent shape from a technology perspective as it relates to the cost of the technology versus the value that it's bringing, they're definitely taking a strategic approach, a very high level approach that considers the needs of all departments and considers all systems that need to be within the ecosystem. There are certain industries where you potentially can have an ERP system and you're done, right? But in most cases, we find that it's ERP plus something else. And when we think about that ecosystem, you have to think about things like ERP, HRIS, your Human Resources Information System, your CRM system, what's on the front end of that? How am I acquiring business? Because that's an extremely important part of what you do. And so what we find is this is what drives you to some level of best of breed approach. And it's very important that you look at each one of those components to, first of all, make certain that they're required and make certain that they're going to basically follow the strategic trajectory of your business. When you look at the technology roadmap for each one of your providers, does it resonate with where you're going as a business, or are they getting ready to pivot away from what you're doing? We've had customers that have unfortunately suffered from that, and there's no way to tell the future, but you have to ask enough probing questions to know you're comfortable with figuring out where your providers are going and whether or not that's going to meet your needs long term. So the strategic element is vital. If it's just left up, if it's just a technical decision, you're not getting there. It has to be a strategic and an operations-driven decision with the stakeholders considered. You need to look at technology that is current or contemporary. If you're looking at older systems that are using older platforms that aren't as pliable and aren't as open, you're inviting tech debt to come in the form of, I've got to batch process, I've got to do imports, I got to manipulate data, I got to import that data again. And so making certain that the technology stack that you are investing in is current, and also that the provider has enough balance sheet to stay current. You need to make certain you understand how well they're doing as a company. And there's certain juggernauts out there that you don't really have to ask the question, right? You do have to ask the question about where they're going strategically, but their balance sheet is just fine. But with smaller niche providers, you have to understand what's going on in that realm and that they're going to be able to stay current, and that they're not also covering such a wide swath of functionality that there's no way they can maintain currency based on what they're taking on versus what their development group can handle. And so timely and relevant visibility to me, is one of the key indicators of effective technology. Do I have the decision support that is relevant when I need to make the decision? When you're managing a business, it's all about decision support. Nobody's buying an ERP system. They're buying the answers that the ERP system is going to give them regarding supply chain. If I'm looking at service resource planning, where do I need to put my people, right? If I'm dealing in distribution or manufacturing, what products do I need to sell more of that are going to drive my margin up or maintain a good margin mix? These questions have to be answered in a timely manner. And when they can be, it's evidence that you've done the right thing from a technology standpoint. Final bullet there, minimum replication and duplication of effort. If I've got to enter the same bit of data or transcribe the same bit of data at all, something isn't aligned and something isn't correct. That opens up the ability or the possibility of having errors in my data. And it's also not an efficient way to run an operation where somebody's transcribing data. And so those are kind of the evidence that you are better aligned than not, and you probably have minimal or no tech debt. All right, let's see. I think we got a polling question coming up here.
Mm-hmm.
And polling question here is, in your opinion, what's the most common cause of technology debt within your organization? And we'll give you guys a few minutes to answer. Some of the potentials here are pressure to meet deadlines, that tactical decision making that Kevin talked about, lack of clear requirements, outdated technologies, information silos, pivots, changes to the business of the operation. And if you guys have something else that you feel is contributing to that we don't have listed here, please put it in the chat and answer with the option F, other. Looks like we're at about 45%. Give it a few more seconds here and we'll take a look at the results. I got one all the above. I believe it. All right. All right, looks like we're at 73. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the results. And so we've got a pretty decent split here. I think information silos is up there at the top. Outdated technologies, that's followed by lack of clear requirements, followed by changes to the operation, indication of systems that aren't flexible. And then Kevin, I think we got pressure to meet deadlines down there as well. What I find interesting about the answer all the above is that really each one of these contributing factors triggers other contributing factors, and kind of makes this question hard to answer. I do think that all the above or many of the above is definitely accurate. And on the outdated technologies, it's interesting because there are certain industries that aren't very well served when it comes to technology. There's not that many providers out there, or there's an extremely fragmented market. And particularly in the financial services and the communications business, which is improving, but I feel like there used to be as many BSS, OSS systems as there were telecom providers, because a lot of telecom providers built their own and some marketed them out. So a lot of outdated technology there. Kevin, can you see anything here that strikes a nerve for you?
Yeah, information silos. I find this in so many of our clients where, to be honest, it's the data lives over here. And so I need to build this other solution set in order to get it over here in a meaningful way. So information silos, I think, is such a driver in a lot of industries. I mean, we see it in construction, where we have separate maybe bidding software or estimate management software. that's outside of your financial management system. It's not connected. You want to be able to go from the bid to the contract to the job or project, and these are just three separate solutions. We can see this in manufacturing and distribution, where if we're looking at upfront, if we're make to a forecast type of environment, or we're make to stock type of environment, we see possible disconnections between what we're forecasting and what we're actually producing downstream. So these are separate or distinct systems. We also see that in other cases in regulated environments for manufacturing. So if you think about life sciences, if you think about anything with aerospace or anything like that, we have oftentimes quality management sits over here and is dealt with differently than the rest of finance and operations and everything else. So I'm not surprised by the information silos. Also not surprised by the outdated technology. We have so many of our clients running legacy systems that just can't scale, can't integrate, and just aren't meant for this type of, I'll say, faster paced business environment where we need to be able to take orders quickly. We need to be able to potentially ship, next day or with same day, in some cases for, distribution or manufacturing or other things like that. Or we need access to that information really quickly. We can't, wait for certain processes to run overnight in order to get us what we need. We need that to happen faster, right?
Definitely.
So these are good.
Definitely on the outdated technologies. I think that a key contributor to the outdated technologies trigger is the bar for the customer experience. And in the case of governments and nonprofits, the constituent experience is far higher than it used to be. I mean, we can all blame Amazon for that. They let you know where your package is all the time. And there's a lot of transparency with your counterparty, be it a customer or a constituent. And we really think that that's raised the bar and it's driving a lot of activity. So let's move on here and talk about the hidden costs and risks associated with tech debt. And it's got impacts on increased cost, and we're going to talk about some additional risks here that could be a little more insidious. First off, financial implications. Front and center for any profit-motivated business is margin erosion, particularly if your operations are not running as efficiently as they need to be. Your supply chain is not running efficiently as it needs to be. Am I expediting freight too much, either inbound or outbound, to meet the needs of the customer? Overspending on maintenance. Am I in an older model that I'm paying for maintenance that really I'm not needing? And I get this a lot from customers, like, why am I paying for maintenance? They haven't changed anything in years, right? That's one of the key complaints we hear on some of that legacy software. Overspend on licensing and support agreements where we have a legacy system and I have, 2 or 3 consulting firms on the entire country that even deal with it. And they charge a premium because they know they've got the market cornered. These are all things that happen here as it relates to the hidden costs, particularly on the financial side. And looking at the operational impact, which contributes to margin erosion, fragmented processes. A process that is not horizontal, it's chunked out based on the fact that I'm dealing with the deal origination here, I'm dealing with the order fulfillment over here, I'm dealing with the invoicing over here, and I don't have that clear horizontal process. That relates to slower workflows and integration challenges. And on the operational impact, one of the clear and present indicators is lack of timely decision support. If I don't have the relevant answer I need to do what needs to be done right now that's going to impact my organization financially, there's issues. And then finally, security and compliance risk. We're seeing this especially in some of the more dated software and also the shadow systems we mentioned earlier. Nothing should concern the C-suite more than a system in use that we don't even know we're using. The vendor hasn't been onboarded. We have no idea if they've got SOC reports. When was their last breach? So shadow systems are a huge challenge there as it relates to risk and data breaches. Regulatory fines, one begets the other there. Nobody wants to be a headline. And on regulatory fines, it could be you're getting audited and there's an issue there. And when I say audit, I mean FDA audit. That can be an issue. And then that can relate to not necessarily audit failures. I think we're maybe taking that one down the field a little too far, but nobody wants a material weakness on an audit. And you can end up having that material weakness if your systems are not tied well, don't have decent controls, and you have the ability to sidestep segregation of duties or other things that a fragmented system can cause. And Kevin, you think I missed anything there?
No, I think we're good on that one.
Good deal. So we got our next polling question coming up here, and we're going to look here and ask you guys, what do you see as the biggest cost or risk of the current tech debt you may be experiencing? And looking at the options here, license overspend, process fragmentation, integration challenges, data breaches, regulatory concerns, or audit challenges. If you guys can respond to that, and again, feel free to drop in the chat any combinations that come to mind. The all the above confirmation. And we'll take a look at this here in just a second, give you guys a chance to respond. Looks like we're at about 40%.
Nicole said B and C, so process fragmentation and integration challenges.
C begets B.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. If we're not tied and we don't have that data governance, your processes are going to break down. And it's almost like it creates silos between departments that need to be working together. What I typically see in organizations that are suffering from that is people that have to over communicate. I mean, they get along well and they're functioning in spite of the system, but there's much better ways to get it done rather than kind of sort of management by walking around.
Yeah.
All right, looks like we're about 60% now.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's go ahead and take a look at the results here. Process fragmentation is by far the winner here. And again, hearkening back to the silos that we talked about, overspend on license is a close second. And I also think that licensing becomes quite a thorn in your side when your systems aren't bringing the value they need to bring. So it may be fair market value, but not to you, based on the fact you can't get that decision support. And I do think that integration challenges, particularly in a best of breed environment that wasn't planned, that's going to cause process fragmentation because we don't have that handoff.
I think too, it looks like Corey also said B and C, much like the MC Escher hands drawing. And then Matt also said B and C as well. So I think we see this a lot, especially here's where I think it is in regulated industries, which, throw a rock, name an industry that isn't regulated, but in highly regulated industries. So in financial industries, right? In banks or credit unions, things of that nature, all of the different products and service offerings that those folks offer have specific specific solutions or systems. And then you have the financial management system that needs to tie all these things together. So whether you have loans for mortgages, autos, student loans, any of those types of things, those are managed in a separate solution, but oftentimes we need some of that information to be shared, right? Or across the platform. And that's where I see, for some of our institutions like that, there are a lot of challenges, especially around integration, right? And then therefore your processes, your approval processes and everything else need to, follow suit. I could see that a lot in that sense.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah.
All right.
So how do we identify and assess your technology debt? So let's talk about how to uncover this. So we want to start with technology inventory. We want to document every system, every tool, every license, and every integration. This includes, who owns it, how is it used, what does it cost, and how does it connect with other systems? Then we want to assess those usage analytics. Are you using what you're paying for? You all mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of your technology that you're not actually getting a lot of use out of. Well, this is where we kind of tie it back to the beginning, to understand. Okay, let's do this assessment. Let's get our usage analytics, and let's identify if we're actually using what we're paying for, and then let's get that stakeholder feedback. So, what is working and what's not working? And let's make sure that we include not just end users, but also managers as well as leadership in terms of, what that vision is for the organization. And then, security and compliance. Let's make sure that are there any risks hiding in these legacy systems? If so, we need to be able to identify those and then work to resolve them. And then, of course, we want to track those key metrics. So utilization rates, cost per tool, risk exposure. Those are all places where we can, find or get a clear picture of where inefficiencies lie and where to focus your efforts on how to resolve this. And then, strategies to eliminate and manage tech debt. So once you've assessed your environment, the next step is to take action. Managing that tech debt requires a shift from being reactive to proactive IT management. It's about making intentional, strategic decisions, not just putting out those fires. So what do we mean by this? Well, it's aligning the technology with business goals. So you don't just buy tools, you invest in capabilities that are going to support your strategy. You want to prioritize which applications and tools to retire, consolidate, or potentially upgrade. We want to streamline that tech stack as well. So that means we want to reduce those redundancies and improve the overall integration experience. So we don't want to have to duplicate data in all these different systems, whether that's customer data, vendor data, contract data, order data, purchase order data, you name it. We've seen this in a lot of our clients across the board. So we want to establish, best practices for governance. That means we create policies for procurement, for implementation, as well as for retirement, and getting a structure and a methodology around that. And then lastly, we want to leverage automation. So that means we want to reduce the manual work and improve consistency across the board, as well as reduce those overall errors. So, an example of this is the life sciences organization. They did a technology roadmap, system selection, as well as ERP implementation. They replaced their outdated legacy software with solutions that better aligned with their operations. So what kind of operations are we talking about? We're talking about Excel sheets for planning and forecasting. We're talking about not necessarily leveraging MRP. We're talking about other solutions for MES, which is manufacturing execution system or software, as well as a separate system for their quality management. So by having all of these capabilities embedded into one ERP system and replacing their legacy system, we were able to remove they were able to remove all of these third-party product solutions, and including some other aspects of quality management. So I would say tremendous benefits in that regard. I think this is one of our last polling questions. So what do you see as the biggest benefit for your organization to eliminate technology debt? Is it improved margin, reduced cost, streamlined operations, more manageable IT environment, an improved user experience, or option F is right in the chat. So, while folks are submitting those responses, I would say one of the other clients that we worked with, they had 3 different time entry systems. They had a time entry for folks that are out in the field. They had time entry for folks that were in the front office as well as back office, and then they had a separate one for, I'll say, a different revenue stream altogether. And so all 3 of these systems had to not only tie back to payroll, but they also had to tie back to their financials. They also had to tie back for margin analysis as well as budgeting. And you can imagine what a challenge that is to deal with, and how much, I'll say, technology debt was there just to not only manage and create, I'll say, integrate all of these systems, but also you have just so much redundancy there as well. All right, 70%. Let's take a look. Streamlined operations. Wow. Yeah. And I think that's the name of the game, because if you're able to streamline your operations, you're able to reduce costs, you're able to see that improved margin. You have a more manageable IT environment as well as overall improved user experience. That's both potentially for your internal users as well as your potentially customer or vendor-facing users. So I'm just doing a quick time check there. So benefits. What is the biggest benefit of eliminating tech debt? So eliminating tech debt isn't just about saving money, it's about unlocking your potential. So when you eliminate technology debt, you're going to be able to align your tech investments with your overall business strategy and your business goals. And you're able to, as we just discussed, reduce your costs by retiring or consolidating legacy systems. You're able to improve that ROI by making better use of what you already own, and you enhance your security and compliance readiness simultaneously. And lastly, you have that improved user experience and operational efficiency, but that's because you have a simplified IT environment, leading to a more agile, scalable organization. Chuck,
Yeah, definitely. I think speaking to alignment's easier said than done, the strategic alignment. And it's interesting that we've seen historically where it's more challenging in places you wouldn't expect it. Rural communication carriers have one of the most challenging strategic alignment as it relates to technology of just about any company we've dealt with. And the reason is, when you're in that environment and you are a technically adept organization, you have to decide what you're not going to do. You end up being a telecommunications provider, a security provider. You may be providing MSP services, so you're an IT provider on top of that, so that I've got a professional services business tucked into this other business. So it's important to understand and kind of start with the revenue streams or the potential revenue streams to see how you need to approach that strategic business goal and get those in the swim lanes and figure out what needs to be done. Also figuring out which revenue stream is worth pursuing and which one isn't. So some of these are managerial and executive decisions that need to be made. And that puts you in a position where you can do some of the other things here that have to do with consolidation or system upgrades, because you're in a better position to make those longer term decisions. That's going to be the key to this. I think that above all else, moving from tactical to strategic thinking as it relates to IT is really what ties all of this together. This is where you're going to see the enhanced reporting abilities. You're going to see the decision support when you need to see it, hearkening back to the evidence of what a strategically designed system looks like. And really, when you look at it, the bottom bullet there, improved user experience and operational efficiency, this also helps you to compete with people. So that is a great benefit, because nobody works for a company where they have to work for the system. They want the system working for them. The same is true of the customers, the constituents that you're serving. And so the benefits are pretty clear in terms of what we've experienced with clients who have pivoted to the right way or have been doing it all along, and looking at that strategic approach. So Kevin, I'll go ahead and let you close this out, because I believe we are at time.
Yeah, sure thing. I just want to remind everybody that this is part 2 of our 3-part series. And so our next one is going to be September 18th, aligning people, skills, and systems. And we want to say thank you so much for your attendance today, as well as your participation. And if you have any other questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll stay a little bit longer to get those questions answered. I see Alexandria. Yes, these sessions are recorded, so they'll be available out there on our website.
All right. Thank you so much, Chuck and Kevin, for a great presentation today. And to address Alexandra's question, yes, we will be recording all of these. And actually, if you visit the slide deck and handouts widget, there is a link there to webcast series where you can see the webcast that we did on July 16th. And then if we didn't have time to answer your questions, we'll be doing our best to follow up with you after the webcast. You can reach out directly to Chuck or Kevin via their email in the speaker bio widgets. And here is a link to an online survey where you can provide feedback for today's presentation. Please take a moment to complete this survey, as your feedback is very important to us. Please also visit mossadams.com for future webcasts and other resources to help elevate your performance upward. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again next time.
Chuck, it looks like we don't have any questions. So
good deal. Yeah. Thanks everybody again for attending, and for those that were chiming in on user enablement. Our next episode in this series is right up your alley, so make certain you join us. And again, we thank you guys for showing up today.
Yeah, thanks everybody.